All right, the purpose of this channel is to share what I learn. That is the core reason why I started this channel. And what I am most passionate about is the spiritual world and how I've approached it through science, through physics, mathematics, philosophy, but also through my own personal growth. And today I feel called to share kind of a story time video. And Oliver the cat has decided to come here and make some noise. Toby the dog is over there. He's chasing butterflies right now. So, you know, a lot of my ideas for videos come from other videos that I've seen on YouTube. And, you know, my algorithm shows me a lot of spiritual content. And along with that spiritual content comes a lot of discussion about trauma. You know, I personally have minimized the effect that trauma has had on me. And, you know, I guess watching this content causes me to realize, you know, it really has had a pretty big effect. You know, I have 2 periods of my life when there was trauma. The first one was my childhood in school. Bullies. I was a target for bullying because I loved science. I was very curious, and my body language and my face showed it. You know, I was this wide-eyed little kid, right? But I was the weird kid for sure. And so there were many years of being picked on verbally and physically, right? The physical bullying stopped when I learned to fight, yeah. But the verbal stuff kept on for a while, until basically those around me grew up enough to know how to treat a person. Yeah. Home life, very peaceful, very supportive, very loving. I was so fortunate in that regard. My parents, oh my gosh. I guess the only thing I would look back on with them is that, the home life was so ideal, practically, that it left me unprepared for adult life. Yeah. And that, put together with the school bullying, convinced me in my early adulthood that the world was a cold, impersonal, cruel, and dangerous place, and the only safety was in a loving home. And so I hurried up to get married. You know, everyone around me was getting married. And so I was getting to the end of medical school, and I thought, I have to get married. And, well, there was someone. Well, okay. Then came the second epoch of abuse. And 6 years later, that ended. Well, it didn't really, because there was post-marriage stuff. But then came a critical illness requiring a lot of narcotics. And I ended up addicted. And why was I vulnerable to that? Well, my physical makeup in some part, but separation from God, programmed beliefs about what a cruel place the world was, self-pity, and I had myself convinced that the world was so rotten that I deserved some shelter from it, and I found that in opioid analgesic pills. And then that came crashing down when it was found out that I was using my privileges as a physician to obtain them for myself. Yeah. And then, with recovery, that's when the spiritual awakening began. And it has been up and down. I relapsed once. The relapse ended more than 11 years ago. And so, I've been in the spiritual space ever since. It has not been ideal, but it's such a contrast to how my life was before that I am grateful every day, even on the bad days. So, a lot of my spiritual journey has been to try to transcend that programming that came from the trauma, that the world is dangerous and uncaring, that I'm all on my own, nobody's coming to take care of me, I have to take care of myself, and the only way to do that is to hustle and make money so that I can pay to be safe. That's the programming that I have been transcending over the last 11 years, but really longer than that. So, my curious mind wants to know how the spiritual things work. You know, if I receive a download from somewhere with a great idea, who sent it? I wanted to know. Well, it is my belief that I have spirit guides, and they send these ideas to me. Do I know that for sure? I guess not, but I like to believe it, and it seems to be helpful. And the spiritual path has broken through that separation from God that made me so vulnerable to addictive behaviors. in the church I grew up in, there's a beautiful carving in wood of a Bible verse that says, "I am the vine, you are the branches." Yeah. If the branch breaks off the vine, it withers and dies, and that's what was happening to me. So now, being attached to the vine, the spiritual vine, I receive the life force that comes from God, from Source. And it's so fulfilling. I feel nourished. And, my scientific studies that have shown me a lot of different things that are going on behind the scenes have been reassuring. I've heard that science and spirituality are polar opposites. No. Two sides of the same coin. And it's more and more becoming like that. Yeah. The science, how did I've always been a very curious person. That's what got me bullied back in the day. But at the end of my relapse, which was largely alcohol driven, the first time it was painkillers, later on alcohol, that was very hard on my brain. And there was worry that I couldn't be a doctor anymore because I had fried my brain. Well, I knew that I needed something to rehabilitate my brain. And that thing, I figured, what is the hardest thing that I can find? The most rigorous intellectual exercise. And that was mathematical physics. Yeah. Mathematical physics is something also that I felt was a refuge. The Schrödinger equation is emotionally neutral. The Einstein equation of the gravitational field does not trigger trauma. Yes, I had math anxiety, but back in school, but now I don't have to worry about getting a good grade, so that part's okay. If it takes me a long time to understand something, I take the time. I don't worry about it. And so mathematical physics is sort of a refuge, and in a way it's kind of like spiritual bypassing. When I'm thinking about a deep scientific topic, like the spiral, for instance, and the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence, I don't feel all that anxious about other things. Plus, it's useful to know these things, and I feel like it's an accomplishment. But yes, there still is the 3D world and the need to make money. And sometimes the science distracts me from those concerns. I've been accused of using it as an escape. And yes, oh yes. Still processing that. Well, that's a little bit of a story time. Kind of how the early trauma led to the awakening, led to the spiritual journey, where the science fits in. Yeah, right now I am passionate about finding out more and more about the geometric idea of the spiral. And oh, my dog needs some help over there. Yeah, so I'm working on that, a video with some images, because talking about spirals, you need to look at them. So that is still to come. All right.